Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the FemiNinja Project. And thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Today, we have an amazing guest. His name is James Perdue, also known as the Professor of Perseverance. James is an expert in resilience, perseverance, and mental toughness. He is a doctor of education, teacher, and coach who motivates people to triumph over tragedies. He is also a speaker who engages his audiences with wit and humor as he shares his own personal and inspirational story of resilience and overcoming obstacles. James is also the host of the fantastic podcast, the Professor of Perseverance podcast, and he is a multi-published author of several books, including 5 children's books and several that are intended for adults. So, James, thank you so much for being here today and welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me on, and we're going to have a good old time here.
Yes, we are. I love talking to you. I've missed that accent because the last time I talked to you, it's been about 3 or 4 weeks. So I've been looking forward to this all day.
There we go.
So
right outside of Nash Vegas, Tennessee.
Now, I'm sure the audience is shocked to hear that. I'm sure they were thinking you were from somewhere up in New England. So, James, and do you prefer James or Jim? What do you go by?
James, but Jim will work as long as you call me for supper.
So. Okay, so we'll stick with James because
there we go.
All right, not planning dinner yet or supper yet.
Not yet. Okay.
So share your story about how you became the Professor of Perseverance and how you got to this point in your life where you are now helping other people overcome obstacles and triumph over tragedies.
As my grandfather would do, he would say, back in 1983, that's how he would do the year. So, but in 1983, I was one of them that grew up. I was one of them, an athlete. I thought I was invincible. Nothing was going to stop me. The world was mine. I was going to get what I wanted. And it was all up to me. Just go and do it. And so I wanted to be a professional athlete. My father died when I was 16. And so I had to grow up and be the man of the family. Now, I wouldn't say that we were poor, but we were knocking on the door of poor. Mm-hmm. All right. So my mom we had a house that sometimes when it rained, sometimes the roof would leak. So we didn't have the money to pay for a roofer. So I would go up on top of the house and try to patch it the best I could at 16. Wintertime, if the temperature got down below freezing and if our water froze, I'm the one underneath the house at 20 degrees trying to find where it's clogged or frozen and trying to get it fixed so we have water during the winter. Auto mechanic, same thing. We just couldn't afford it, so I tried to do the best I could. And so as an athlete, knowing the money they were making, I said, if I can get this professional athlete, become a professional baseball player, I can get mom that new house that she needs, get her a new car she needs, get my brother, new cars and stuff, my brothers, grandmother, grandpeople, they have everything, but I'm sure I could find something. And so I was even with my mom because, like I said, my father died. And so there used to be what was called back in the day of 1983, my grandfather would say, they used to have what was called a mail order bride. So I was going to get a mail order groom for my mom. And so to help out with her in that area as well. And so that was my goal, is to be a professional athlete to give back to the family. And so I ended up getting a college scholarship to go play baseball. And I was in college for 2 full weeks. I got to play 1 college game in the fall. I was the only freshman starting. The very next day, we were playing a pickup game of football, but we were playing tackle, but no helmets, no pads, we're playing tackle. And what had happened is my team got the ball back. We'd been playing probably 2 hours. And so when my team got the ball back, I said, hey, I'm done playing for today. I'm going to leave. I got to get my stuff ready for class the next day. This was on a Sunday. Actually, it was September 11th. 9/11. So I tell people I had 9/11 way before the country did in 2001. And so So I said, I'm leaving, got to get stuff ready for class. I get about 10 feet from the huddle, and then I hear someone say, we need someone to run the ball. I stopped, turn around, and I said, all right, I'll come back for one more play.
Oh.
All right, now hint, that's the name of my very first book, is One More Play. And so I go back to the game. They hand the ball off to me. I break a couple of tackles, score a touchdown. And, you know, when the touchdown scored, the play is over now. It's dead now. Well, one guy decided to play a little longer than me. When I was putting the ball down and turning back towards everyone, I saw something in my right side, my peripheral vision. Saw something. I didn't know what it was. I just saw something. I felt contact up high on my right shoulder, and I heard a loud pop. And so then both of that day, only one of us returned to her feet, and it wasn't me. I was paralyzed instantly.
Wow. Wow. And did you know as soon as you were hit and you heard that snap, did you know intuitively that you had broken your neck, basically?
No. When I first heard the pop and felt the contact up high, I thought my collarbone broke. And I was left-handed, and I thought the right side collarbone broke. So because the guy, all of a sudden, he's going, I tackled him, and I'm going, after the play's over, you tackle me. And he said something else. And I said, man, I'm gonna get up and beat you up. I was going to fight. And I said, because I figured the collarbone was broken on this side, and I was left-handed. I figured I was good enough, strong enough, again, invincible. Right. I could beat him up with one hand. And so I lift my head to get up, and then that was it. The shoulders didn't come up. My arms at that time didn't move. Legs definitely didn't move, and toes, nothing. And put my head down, tried a second time to get up, lifted my head, nothing come up. And then the old adage, you know, say three's a charm. Tried a third time, didn't get up. And then I started thinking, then I knew I was paralyzed instantly. And then I started thinking of JT.
JT.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, you want me to tell you about JT? Oh.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to figure out who JT is. Yes, thank you. That would be good.
When I was 12, 13, 14, 15, I used to go visit my grandfather in a nursing home.
Okay.
And one day I was going to go visit him, and about 2 rooms before my grandfather's, I was getting ready to get, I heard some guy, hey, buddy, come here, man. So I go into the room, and JT, I met a guy named JT, and he was paralyzed from his neck down from a car accident. And he asked me to hold the water with a straw in it so he can get something to drink. Mm-hmm. And so then I would stop in when I see my grandfather, I'd stop in and say hello to him then. And so I'm laying on the ground thinking of JT, thinking at the age of 19, I'm going to be put in a nursing home.
Oh my God. So okay, now there you are, you're lying on the ground, and you're kind of seeing your life flash before your face, or, you know, it's changing forever, and thinking you'll be in a nursing home. What happened to the guy that hit you? Did he realize how badly he injured you? Did he try and help you? Did he run off? What happened then?
I don't know anything more about him that day. I don't know. But I wish I could have some type of 40-year reunion of everybody that was there that helped me, so I can thank them for what they did. Because there was one guy there, and I don't know at that time in 1983 if they were called EMTs, ambulance workers, paramedics, or what they were called then. But he was going to do that to be. So the next thing, when he realized I was paralyzed, he's hollering for someone to run to his room, get his blanket, bring pen and pad, bring a stethoscope, his blood pressure kit, and he's doing all that and keeping me calm. That way, when the ambulance got there, his blood pressure was his pulse is whatever, and then of course pass on the information he can't move. But he was there. I wish I don't know his name. I wish there was some way I could get a hold of him. But he was there. But the other guy that hit me, only twice that I've heard anything about him. And when I was in the hospital, I was on what's called a striker frame. They had to go in and screw holes in my head to hang weights off of this, looks like a horseshoe. And they hung weights off of it to stretch my neck, trying to get the vertebrae to go back in place. And you lay on your back on this striker frame for 2 hours, and then they'll turn the bed over. Then you lay on your stomach for an hour. And then, so every 2 and 1 hour for the first 2 weeks, I was turned every 2 and 1 hour. But one day I was staring at the floor. 2 guys come in, they're talking to me. And I think this guy that hit me was there. And the only reason he didn't say I'm the one who hit you, the only reason I think was him is when they left, I heard the door shut, but then I heard it open up and heard someone say, "I'm sorry, man." And then the door shut. So I'm assuming it was him, but I don't know for sure. But then I heard 6 months later, after the injury, or after I got out of hospital, rehab, I'm back at home, and some other people I met down there, and he was bragging how hard he hit me. So I have no idea if that's true or not, but but I heard that.
Well, it's not a very nice thing for me to say or for me to think, but I kind of hope that there's a special place in hell for him.
So, I'm over with it. I hope he's got the best life going. I'm sure this immaturity talking, maybe trying to impress some girl, I don't know, down there at the time. But no, truly, I hope I would like to meet him, let him know that I've had a lot better life than any was ever thought. And for him, if he was holding any guilt, he can let it go. So I wish I could meet with him to tell him that.
You're a very kind person.
So, but I just, those things to say, don't let people live rent free in your head. And yeah, I agree with that. Now that I've gotten older, hopefully a little wiser. And now I just tell people, I just hope you have the best life possible. I don't care what they've done.
So now then you're out of the hospital, going through rehab, and you're back at home. Now, you were the oldest child. You were helping around the house, helping to keep things together because, your dad had passed away. How did this, this must have been devastating for your mother on so many levels.
I'm the middle child.
Okay.
And my older brother is what you call non-mechanically inclined.
Okay.
So that's why I did the other stuff with him in a car. For him to turn the radio in and put gas on, he's doing great. Okay. And driving. So, but there's other ways he's contribution, can contribute. Like he's been a caregiver for 40 years with other people. So for him to help get me early on, to help get me dressed and get me in and out of the chair and stuff. So he couldn't do the other stuff, but he could do that. And he's great at that job. And so and we got a younger brother at that time. And so my mom, she's the strongest woman I know. My dad, I've never met my real dad, but they divorced for his first birthday. He died when I was 12. He was 35. And my mom sent word, said, if you want to see your sons before you die, she'll bring us to the hospital. That'd be the older brother and me, not the younger one. And he never sent word he wanted to see us. So we didn't get to ever meet him. She remarried, and that was where we got the younger brother. And he's the one that I consider my father that died when I was 16.
Right.
I tell people he's the one that loved me when I needed it. And he's the one that busted my butt when I needed it. And trust me, when you have the invincibility attitude that I had, your butt needed busted, correcting fairly regularly. So there's one story that the dad would always say, if you get in trouble with school, you better be the first person to tell me when I get off work. Because if I find out from another source, it's going to be twice as bad. And so one time I got in trouble with school, and I remember sitting knowing he wouldn't be off from work for another hour and a half when I got home from school. I sat on the very front porch on the step, waiting for him to be sure I would be the first one to tell him. So mom wouldn't do it, or wouldn't get a phone call from the school or something. And so I sat there for an hour and a half waiting on him.
So then now, once you were back at home, rehabbed, learning how to get around in your chair and function, did you go back to school?
ended up going back to school. And then to go back, the doctors, I remember ask them, how bad is this? Because I knew I was paralyzed. And
Right.
again, with the invincibility attitude, I knew baseball was over with, but I always thought I would walk again.
Mhm.
Okay, that's the invincibility I had. But they said, bad enough, you'll never walk again. And at that time, I wouldn't even move from my neck down. He said, you may not even move from your neck down. And then later on, when I finished rehab in Birmingham, they suggested to my mom and brothers that I should be put in a nursing home, that I'd be too much of a burden for them to provide care. And so fortunately, we were hard-headed, didn't listen. We came home, we did our own form of therapy and stuff like that. And I got where I was able to stand by myself, walk with a walker for 10 feet. Now that 10 feet felt like I run a mile, but
Right.
it was great for circulation, standing, stretching. It was mentally positive knowing I can do that. And I tell people I made a liar out of the doctor. He said I would never walk again. I made a liar out of him for 10 minutes. It's just the other 23 hours and 50 minutes he was correct.
But you did make a point. And I actually.
And then, go ahead. I was going to say, and we finally, I started thinking, if I'm going to have any type of life, because I didn't know anybody in wheelchairs in where I lived in my area. And I said, so if I'm going to need a life, then I need to go back to school. And when I first went to college, I went for 3 reasons, because I only made C's in high school. Now, I always heard from my teachers and my mom and dad, you're smarter in what you're putting out. Okay, but in high school, all you had to do is keep a C average to play sports. So why do I need to work hard on an A if I'm going to play sports when I get a C and play sports? So I just kept the good C. And so I started, but 3 is the reason I went to college. One is hopefully get drafted so I can get that house and car and everything for the family. Okay. And then also was to party and meet all the girls I could meet. That was the 3 reasons I went to college. So other than that, I didn't care about graduating, care about a degree. So, but after you get injured, paralyzed, now you have to go study. So my brother, again, his contribution is, he told me, he says, because I went to school, then I'd quit, then I'd go, then I'd quit. And finally decided, if you're going to do this, you got to neither get it done with or just forget about it totally. And he's the one that said, hey, all the hard work and determination, everything you had towards playing baseball, now you need to direct it to your studies like that. And so, so went back, and only took me 8 years to get my 2 years associate's degree. And then 2 years to 2.5 years to finish up my bachelor's. And then I got to learning and liking the studying. And so for 2 years master's program, I got done in 1 year. And then got done with a doctorate. Well, I didn't do my doctorate till 15 years after I got my master's. I went back and got it.
So that is kind of addictive, isn't it? Once you start learning and liking it and realizing, hey, this really is another way of having a different kind of fun.
I tell you, I talk to kids when I speak with the sports level, and I encourage them, if you're not studying now, you need to be because when I went back to school, I didn't know how to study. So what I'm doing is just memorizing what they give me so I can pass the test, because I didn't know how to study. And for an example, one test I was taking, we had 20 pages of notes for a midterm. And I would memorize the first page. Then I would turn around and memorize the second page. Then I'd go over the first page, make sure I had it, go over the second. Then I'd do the third page, did it till I got all 20 pages. And so it took me 4 days to get all this stuff before the test, just memorizing. I can't tell you anything now about it. And so I remember this one girl, I said, you study? And she says, about an hour. I said, an hour? Well, I hope you do good on this test then for an hour. So we got back to midterm. She made a 90. I made a 94 because she knew how to study.
Right.
And I didn't. And so I go, I got 4 extra points. It only took me 4 extra days. So yeah, because she knew how to study. I didn't at that time. But once I learned, and I would encourage anybody, take summer classes. because they're 5-week classes, not 15 weeks. They have to give you the important things, the most important. They can't give you the crap that just to pass time, and you're done in 5 weeks and you go to the next subject.
That is excellent advice, taking the summer sessions or summer classes.
The first time I did it, I wasn't thrilled about doing it, but so I can get done with my associate's degree, my advisor advised me to. And oh yes, every chance I got, I was taking summer classes, yes, sessions.
And I just want to go back a little bit to something you said a while back.
Okay.
And that is just that it seems like there's a certain family trait that you have of being very hard-headed. And once you make up your mind, nobody's going to stop you.
Yeah, pretty much when we get going and we get focused in an area, we do pretty good with it.
And I definitely want to applaud you, take a moment to acknowledge your accomplishment by being able to stand and even, walk for those 10 minutes with that level of an injury is truly remarkable. And even that's why I was going to ask you about it, because you have so much mobility and it looks like strength in your upper extremities even. So you've got a lot of upper body function, which is unusual for a cervical fracture. Yes.
So yeah, of course you get because I just know what it was told 40 years ago to me. All this stuff changes nowadays, but used to be you had 2 different spinal cord injuries. One's called a complete injury, the other was incomplete. And if you're in complete, that means that your spinal cord is cut all the way through and there's no hope of anything happening. But if you're an incomplete, that means it's still intact somewhere or all the way. They think with mine back then, I firmly believe that if I got my neck broken today the way it did, I would be walking with the steroids and the other stuff that they do to keep it cold, to keep the swelling down. I think I would be walking today. May not be playing baseball, but I would be walking, because they think with mine, I'm incomplete. That means it's still intact. And they think that where the spinal cord swelled up against the vertebrae, the bone, and it blocked blood flow in there, that it killed the peripheral nerve endings or whatever on the outside. And that's why I'm able to move my legs and arms and stuff. But the other stuff was so much damage that why I can't do it all the time.
Did they ever say that it was kind of like a freak accident? Because somebody like yourself, you were young, you were healthy, you were an athlete. It had to have been just the way, the way he hit you from the angle or whatever. It just seems like it was a really freaky accident.
Yeah, it's got to be. I don't know when's ever. I've used the word just a freak accident. I don't know if any of the doctors did. Because again, how many people you see go through a car accident and then the car is total bad and they're walking and with a few cuts, and then you see someone just bumped a car and damaged the front end and then their neck is broken.
Right.
So it's just a freak thing that happened. But they told me it only takes 5 to 7 pounds of pressure to break a neck.
Yeah.
5 to 7 pounds of pressure. Think of a 5-pound weight. 5 to 7 pounds of pressure. But they said with that guy's weight and my weight at that time and the force of the hit and gravity pulling me to the ground, there's probably 800 to 1,000 pounds of pressure that landed on my head and neck.
Jeez.
They said to me that day. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, in that case, you're lucky to be alive.
And another doctor said probably because I'm an athlete is why I lived. If I wasn't in so, I don't say physically amazing shape, but because of being physically an athletic shape, he said I may not have made it through it.
Gosh. Okay, so then how did you get to the point where you decided you were going to be coaching people, working with people, becoming an author? I would love to hear more about that. And what was the trajectory of your life after the accident, after you started going back to school, really learning a lot and learning that learning could actually be fun.
And my goal was to become a coach and teacher. And so that was what I was going to school for. I would prefer coaching and not teaching, but they didn't do that then, even though nowadays they do that, but they didn't then. So I ended up, it took me 3 years to get a teaching position. And I believe it's because being in the wheelchair that they didn't want. I have no proof to be able to sue anybody there other than that. I remember going to one interview that was an hour and a half, 2 hours away from where I lived. And I called them 3 days before my interview because they're already set up. I said, hey, do y'all have positions opening in science and health and something else? And they said, oh, yeah, we got plenty of openings. I said, all right, I'll be there in, it was 2 or 3 days later. So I drove all up there, 2 hours and everything like that. And they spent 15 minutes with me on the interview and said, there's no position opening right now, but we'll keep your mind up. I said, no positions. I said, I just called 2 days ago and there's plenty of openings. And then they said, oh, well, they were all filled by then. I said, so why wouldn't someone have called and canceled this interview? And so I have a strong suspicion of that one, but I couldn't prove anything for the discrimination. But it took me 3 years to finally get a teaching job, and I got into coaching basketball. I was doing baseball. Actually, I was coaching baseball on the high school team, but I was teaching 7th grade science. And actually, when I got there, the basketball coach for the girls team, him and I played on the high school baseball team together. And so I went up and asked him, I said, hey, Sam, he said, I want to be involved somehow. And, we're both in sports. And I said, I don't know anything about basketball, except I know if you put it in the goal, you get points. And if you hit them too hard, you get a foul. I said, but I can be your conditioning coach. And so he brought me on for me to do that. And I worked with him for 2 years. And after the second year, he says, I'm not coming back as coach. It's your team. I said, what? I said, I don't know nothing about this. And so fortunately, another guy I'd met over there, him and I went in and took the team over as co-coaches. And during that time, out of 10 years, 12 years, we were in the county championship game, probably 10 out of 12 years. We didn't win all of them, but we probably won half and lost half of them in the championship game. And you'll see behind my head, let me move one way or the other way. There's a basketball where we won the state championship. Won the state championship 1 year. And so that's how I got into the teaching and coaching. And then life came back spinning around to me. And 1 year getting ready to start school over to, the first of the thing, I put my shoes on and went to school and noticed a blister coming up on my foot. And come to find out, got bit by a brown recluse that was in my shoe on the bottom of my foot. And it got to be about the size of a tennis ball, this sore. And so by the time that blister opened up, all that dead tissue, they had to go and cut all that away. And then they told me don't stand on it because it would break the new tissue growing. So after not standing for 6 months, I lost the strength to stand. And so now I'm feeling like a burden because someone's had to help me into bed, help me out of bed, help me get dressed now. I've been independent for 25 years, living alone and everything. And then having to get someone to come help me get dressed, help me get in bed. I could get out of bed, I just couldn't get into bed. And so I'm feeling like a burden now. Then my younger brother, I mentioned earlier, we had a younger brother, and I said had, so he passed away during this time. And so what had happened is now I've been depressed for a year because I feel like a burden. My younger brother was an alcoholic. He was a functional alcoholic. He'd get up and work all day, but then he sure enough drank while he got home. And so we noticed skin colors wasn't looking good and took him to the hospital, and they kept him for a week and had to give him transfusion. And they told him it was not cirrhosis of the liver yet, but if he kept on, it's going to get there. And they gave him a 10% chance of living if he kept drinking. They gave him 10% chance to live 5 more years
Oh,
if he kept drinking the way he was. Now he tried to quit cold turkey, tried to do, he did his best trying to, but then his good old friends got him back into drinking. They loved him that much that they brought it back to him. And so he was an auto mechanic. And so they told him when they checked him out, he had a hernia and an ulcer. And they said, don't pick up anything heavy so you don't tear anything by, from picking up something heavy.
yeah.
One night I couldn't get into bed, so I had to call him, and he came over, and Mom came over to help me in bed. And that night he died. And now I felt like a burden for a year now that them having to help me get dressed and get in bed and out of bed. And now my brother's died because he was told not to pick up anything heavy. And so he helped me in bed and he died that night. So now I felt like I killed my brother. And so then I attempted suicide a few months later, 3 times in 3 days to get out of here. That's how bad I wanted out, 3 times in 3 days. And the last time they found me laying on my van floor, sucking carbon monoxide in the garage, someone found me.
Jeez, I am so sorry.
So that's, I mean, I tell people trying to make it lighten the mood a little bit here, that once you live through a suicide attempt, they make you see a psychiatrist or a psychologist. They make you see one. And so seeing this psychiatrist or psychologist, he made me realize that, he wanted to help me so I can get a good night's sleep, to go teach and coach, to be with everybody. And his love. And the Bible says, when another man gives his life for one, and said, you got to look at it that he was doing this to help you. He wasn't thinking of you being a burden. And so the psychologist, he's the one that said, you need to write a book. You need to get into speaking. He suggested Toastmasters, the National Speakers Association. You need to get out there and tell your story and help other people and provide hope for other people. And so I quit teaching, and that's how I got where we're at today.
So now, when was that? How long ago did that happen?
2010.
2010.
12 years.
Okay.
Well, 2009 is when I attempted suicide. He died 2008. And I tried to, even in my book, I wrote about the suicide attempt. And I tell people, said, the first night I took 2 packs of Sudafeds, 48 pills. And on the Sudafed package, it says, don't operate heavy machinery. It could cause drowsiness and dizziness and stuff like that. And that's just taking a normal dose. And I said, well, I took 48 pills in 3 minutes. And all I got was a headache. I said, I got out of my wheelchair and laid on the floor because I figured I'd be dead. And when my older brother found me, I'd be dead. And so I laid on the floor with a headache. And so now when he comes to check on me, my older brother, I'm going, well, what do you tell him? Can't tell him you tried to kill you. And they say, I've already written my suicide letter, put it in the mail that morning and other stuff. And so to give to my mom and everybody, and $2,000 cash was in there because I didn't know what they're going to do with my checking I didn't know all this stuff. So I got cash out to give to them to help them till they got everything. And so he comes over and said, what are you doing on the floor? And I go, my glasses fell off and I was reaching to pick them up off the floor and I just fell. And so that's what I told. So the next day, all this stuff's still in your body. So the next day I got a good night's sleep, but I woke up. So I called the pharmacist. I said, hey, I'm having insomnia. What would you recommend me to get some to sleep? And they said, Benadryl. And well, I put all my wallet and cards, credit card, debit card, everything in the mail because I didn't want someone digging through my house when I die, finding everything. So I put it all in the mail to my mom. So I had $6 to buy 1 pack of Benadryls. And so I go buy that. So now I'm taking all 24 of them, same thing. Don't operate heavy machinery, drowsiness. And so I take all of them at one time. And this was the Super Bowl where the undefeated New England Patriots was playing the Giants. And all I did was sleep and wake up and miss the game and hear how the Giants beat the undefeated team. And I'm going, that's it, God? You let me miss the game? I said, but you won't take my life, but you let me miss the game? And so, yeah. And so the very next day now is Monday, and I'd already made phone calls to other teachers thanking them. And I left it at their school. That way, not at home. That way they don't come check on me or anything.
Right.
And figured they would have known I was dead before they got to school. And so now they're at school. Now I'm getting phone calls at 5:30 in the morning, 6 o'clock, want to know what's going on. And so now I'm having to lie to all of them. And that's when I attempted and got in the van and taking in carbon dioxide, and somebody comes over and checks on me. And then I'm in the hospital in a hyperbaric chamber for 4 hours, forcing the carbon monoxide out and the oxygen in. And it was in the hospital for 7 weeks. And that's when, met up with psychologists. And from there is where we got to today.
So 7 weeks in the hospital for the clearing out of the carbon monoxide poisoning, or was it for the psychiatric evaluation?
No and no. I knew once I lived that they were going to do the psychiatric stuff, and knew there was probably be a 38-day in psych ward somewhere.
Yep.
And so then what do you do then? You play the game. Okay. And so now the playing the game is I felt like a burden because I couldn't transfer into bed, couldn't dress, couldn't do all. And so I just felt like a burden. I didn't tell him anything else, just felt like a burden, didn't want. And I don't remember if I told him about my brother dying or not, but I don't remember that. But so it was to get rehab to try to build some strength up to help me with. That's what the 7 weeks was for, not.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Once they bought into that, then I was out of the psychiatric ward. So I knew I wasn't going to be put there.
Yeah.
And so
good call.
So not
smart.
to say being in the psych thing for 30 days or 6 days would have been the worst thing. Not saying that, but to stay out of it would have been better for me, I think.
Yeah.
And get the therapy that I could use.
Right.
And so play the game to that extent.
Yeah. Okay. So then you're released from the hospital. Did you start writing your book right away?
I actually started writing that book before all this got into, before all this going on with the suicide attempts, stuff like that, before he suggested, I'd already started writing it. It took me 12 years to write the book. And I tell people, I would write one page and may not touch it for 2 months, or write one paragraph and then not touch it for 6 months. I said, it's a miracle in itself. You know how we update our computers. I said, if I would have lost that manuscript, I would have never started all over, being the first time writing. And so it's a miracle in itself that I didn't lose that when I'm updating computers. And so, but all it did was just give me more to write, to add in the suicide attempt. And then how eventually I got my service dog, Ricardo, was part of the reason of this. While I'm in the hospital from attempted suicide, I'd been applying for a service dog and did everything they wanted me to do. And they said, we'll let you know when we got one for you. And so when I'm in the hospital, my brother, I would have him bring my mail to me so I could write out the bills so they wouldn't have to do it, and stuff. And well, this letter came from Canine Companions of Independence, and they said, James, we've been calling your house. We've sent emails. We have a dog for you that can, they said a canine assistant to help you, but we can't get a hold of you. We need you to get a hold of us. Let us know if you're still interested. And so I tell one of my stories that I teach is hope comes in the form of a dog. And here this dog is to help me with some independence for things was huge at that time. And so, so that's how I ended up getting Ricardo.
Love the name. And of course, as I've told you before, I am a devout dogaholic. I mean, I can see a dog and I just fall apart. It's like, oh, look, a dog, like I've never seen one before. And I told you, I've done rescue. I've had multiple dogs living in my house at one time. I mean, I just love dogs. They're just magical. And I even had a recent interview. Oh gosh, I think it was episode 159, I think is what it was. And it was Barking for Balance. It was with a guy who had an incredibly intense fear of dogs for 25 years. And he finally ended up like facing his fears and becoming this incredible dog trainer.
The dog whisperer.
He did. Yeah. He's like the dog whisperer. And he always says, that dog is God spelled backwards.
So I've heard that before. Yes.
Yep. And that he says, I do not train dogs. I train people.
There you go. It's right. Yes. Yeah. Someone I was walking Ricardo at our local Walmart, which is not sponsored by the program here. And even though Walmart, you need to be sponsoring, but we were walking there and one elderly woman come by, wanted to pet him. And they told us it's up to us if we want people to pet them or not. There's some people, they were buying those patches, do not pet, I'm at work or something like that. And I thought, I'm going to let them pet. One, I can share my story. I can share canine companion information for anybody who may wound. I said, yeah, I'm going there and I can meet new people. And I said, I'm going to let them pet anytime they want to. Well, one elderly one come up and she goes, well, dogs are God's best friends or best. He likes dogs the best or best friend, best something, creature, whatever, other than humans. And I'm going, no, I don't remember reading that in the Bible. And then she says, well, what does dog spell backwards? I go, I never thought of it. Yeah, that's the first time I heard it. Yeah. So that, yeah.
Yep. And I know there's, I was raised Byzantine Catholic. It's not quite Roman Catholic. It has a very Eastern European, flavor to it. But so we all the saints and everything like that. And I didn't find out until I was an adult that there is a patron saint of dogs. It's Saint Hubert.
Oh, okay.
And so I would always, if one of my dogs was sick, it's like, Saint Hubert, please help me with this dog, blah, blah, blah. And then I found out just recently, I was doing some more research on, the patron saint of dogs, and like 3 of them came up. So it's like, okay, well, I'll take all 3 of them too, just to help me out here.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So it's like, have I been talking to the wrong one? But I don't think that's possible. Because God answers all prayers when it comes to dogs.
I tell you what, you can learn a lot from a dog.
Yes, you can.
I tell people that I was going to teaching one morning, come across a curve around the curve, and this dog had already gotten hit by a car before I got there. You can see it was a black lab, and you can see he was paralyzed in the back, and he was dragging himself with his front paws to get off the road. And the cars had already pulled over, and there's 2 guys trying to help the dog. But yeah, I saw this dog dragging itself off. And I said, here we are as humans, the most intelligent out there, but we would complicate anything and everything when it's simple. Here this dog wants to get off the road to live another day and not get hit by a car again. And it said, here we are whining and crying because I stumped my toe, or whining and crying because my boyfriend left me, or I'm a spinal cord. I can't move now. Oh, poor pitiful me. Not to say these things shouldn't get some attention, but to dwell on it forever and be down and out is not the right thing. I'm not saying I shouldn't be sad from the very beginning, but here it is 39 years later. If I'm still that sad, something's not right.
And look at what you've done with your life.
We've done 1 or 2 things I'm proud of.
Yeah. So. Well, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit, about the books. But one thing I want you to share with the audience, because I absolutely love the story, is about, and I think it was another Walmart story. They really should be sponsoring you, by the way.
Well, I'm talking about sponsoring you because we're on your program right now.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Sponsor the FemiNinja, and then they can sponsor your program as well as your books. They can put your books in their store.
I thought about doing, going, I think in Little Rock, Arkansas is where their headquarters is. Walmart, I think, not Little Rock, but I think it's in Arkansas. And I thought about, because I was seeing like well, I'm not going to call the cereal out, but you can go in. They were having books with the cereal. I was thinking, wonder if I can get Walmart's Great Value cereal to put my little Ricardo books in there, children books in there. And I never jumped on the opportunity yet.
So I think you should. I think you should do that.
I need to take a visit there and go personally and see about doing it. Yeah. I guess run it through where I live, see what the managers may say or think, but then they don't have the final say. So, but yeah, I thought about it. I forgot what cereal was, and they were advertising some books.
Yeah.
And I was going, man, when I was writing it, I was going, man, I ought to get Great Value, this Walmart's brand, and can get the books done. So,
yep. I think you could. I would definitely look into that. But I wanted to the story about the little boy who wanted to pet Ricardo.
Yeah, that's one of the books, and it's called "Can My Son Pet Your Dog?" And the woman come up to us. I was with Ricardo. Woman come up, says, "Can my son pet your dog?" And so he's in the buggy, and so I got Ricardo to get up in my lap for the boy to be able to reach him, pet him, and then all of a sudden the boy points at Ricardo and he goes, "Dog." I said, "Yeah, buddy." I said, "Yeah, he's a dog." And then I looked at mother and she was crying. And I said, "Oh, I'm sorry. I put Ricardo down. I don't know what he did, but I'm terribly sorry." She goes, No, you don't understand. So my son is autistic. And that's the very first word I heard him say. And the boy had to have been 4 or 5 years old. And so in the book at the end, I go and talk about autistic and autism and say, something's not wired correctly in their brain, but he proved that whatever we're doing, trying to teach them, is getting in. It's just they're having problems getting it back out. I said, because he didn't call Ricardo a cat. He didn't call him a doorknob, a toilet seat. He called him a dog. And so he knew what he was. And so he just can't get the information out like normal. And so, but they're getting it into him. And so, and I never seen this woman or child ever again, because I would have gave him a copy of the book, say, "This is, from him, from y'all." And I've never seen him again.
So now you have 5 children's books based on Ricardo?
5 based on Ricardo. Yep. He got his own Christmas book helping Santa Claus and Rudolph in one area in the house. Another one is a boy went through cancer, and most of these stories are true. I think they're true. Well, no, one of them's not. But one with the cancer. And the thing is, the boy in real life dies, but I didn't have the boy die in my book. And it's from the family. And I gave a copy to the family. I said his name was Isaac, and it was called Isaac and Ricardo go hunting, something like that. And yeah, he ended up going. So Ricardo goes to the hospital to visit him while he's taking, chemical treatments for his cancer, stuff like that in the hospital. And then at the end, Ricardo's bringing a duck to him. The boy is shot down. And at the end, but again, in true real life, the boy didn't make it. So, but in that, then he's one where he goes to an assisted living house. I forgot the name of that. And he's playing volleyball with them, dancing with them, and whatever else. I forgot what else. So, and then I got the people that elderly people I know, my mom and some other people, their names are put in there. So they're excited. They get to say that with their name in it. And the very first one is kind of based on him and me meeting, but where I got to meet him when I was 40 years old, I guess, something like that, maybe older than 40. But I portrayed like a 15-year-old boy in the book.
Okay.
So, and my mom is on a computer, which my mom, she knows nothing about a computer. But in the book, she's on a computer trying to find out, because the boy in the wheelchair wanted to play baseball, and all he could do is hit, but he couldn't run the bases or run to catch the ball in the field. And so she was looking up a way that a dog would chase the ball down for him, bring it to me for me to throw it. And so that's how in the book we got Ricardo.
Uh-huh. Well, I love that. I love the Ricardo series. And then what about your other books? You've got the one book, your first one more play. And
One more play.
What are some of the other ones?
Then I have another one that's based on one more play. It's called I'll Come Back for One More Play. And the only difference in the book is one of them is for, I would say, the 18 and older, because the suicide stuff it talks about in there.
Okay.
And the one I'll Come Back for One More Play, I've just taken those chapters out and taken other negative stuff out to make it more positive for the 17 and under to read.
Oh, good for you. Okay, great.
So
Good
because I would feel real bad if a 15-year-old read about my suicide attempt and then they're practicing it.
Yeah.
And so I took those out just for that. So I haven't designated that way. And then another one, I was told I had cancer. And so that was the easiest book to write. All I did was journal everything, what I felt. Because I figured if they tell me I got 6 months to live, hey, I'm going to have this done before then. If they tell me I got 60 more years, then we're in good shape too. And so all I do is just journal. Only thing is it's not bullet form, it's in paragraph forms, but whatever happened that day for the 6 or 7 weeks is what whoever I talked to, whatever they said positive, how I had to kick this one friend I had knew for 40 years out of my life for a while because he was so negative. I don't want to have any of that negative stuff going on with this going on. And so, and so it would be like week 1, day 1, September 29th, then week 1, day 2, September 30th, all the way to the end.
Right. Yeah.
And so it's called Cancer, a story of hope and strength and blessings, I think.
Well, kudos too to you for kicking that guy, to the curb for at least a while, because that's a really important part of healing and trying to have that positive energy to focus on is getting rid of the negative people in your life. So
Amen.
I actually broke up with my best friend, BFF of 30 years. And I mean, it wasn't like a temporary thing. It was like final, but it's really interesting because how do you tell somebody you've been very best and dearest friends with for 30 years that you haven't liked them for the past 15 and you've been trying to figure out how to break up with them for the past 10. And finally it was like, it's time. So I did it.
Yeah. Yes. Same here. I've known these guys since we were 12 years old and grew up and everything. And 40 years and man, you got to stay at your place and go away. I can't have that while my health is more important. Yeah. And now not to say I tell people not that you have to kick them out forever. If it happens that way, it happens that way. It's meant to be. I said, but it doesn't mean you can't still love them from a distance. You can't still wish the best for them. You just don't have to listen to it.
Exactly. So now where can people find your books?
And I got another book that was out. It's called and on my website, if you go to professorofperseverance.com, I have a free mini course with, you get a PDF, and the book and the course is called Your Past Doesn't Have a Future, But You Do.
Oh, nice. I like that.
I mean, how many people live in the past? I can't go do such and such because I got a DUI 40 years ago. Man, get over it. I did something 40 seconds ago and it's not right, but I'm going to do the best I can. Right. So we're all going to goof up in life. We're all going to, as older as we get, we try not to, but we still goof up. All right. So if you kept everything in the past, you keep living in the past, I said, you're not going to get anywhere. And an example, part of my course, I have an opening of Al Bundy and Married with Children, because all you heard him say was, Al Bundy, I scored 4 touchdowns in one game. and they talk about for the montage, it's like 35 seconds of Al Bundy, 4 touchdowns in one game, how many times he did it. And then finally at the end, he's in the car with Peg, and it's like their high school days or something. And then they make some comment about, well, this is not this is not the only thing that I'll do in my future or something like that. But when he's a shoe salesman, that's all he brings up is 4 touchdowns in one game. So I use that as my opening with the montage.
I love it. I love it. Okay. So then let me see. So you've got the website and people can sign up and get that PDF.
And a free course, mini course.
The free course. And they can find your books on your website as well?
Website, Amazon, Barnes and Noble.
And eventually Walmart, once we get a hold of them and we...
do you know, I don't know if you know that, but did you know that they have a contest once a year of people that's inventing or come up with something? And if you win the contest, they put your product on their shelf. And so I hadn't submitted my book or anything, but hey, if you got something, your book or something, I'd love to see if I can find out they were doing it. I looked into it years ago. Maybe you want to look to see if you can get your book put up there.
Well, maybe I will. And I lived in Arkansas once for 19 months, 1 day and 15 hours. It was shortly after my husband and I were married. Yeah, I mean,
not that you were counting it down, huh?
No, I wasn't counting it down. I mean, it was a lovely place. It really was. It just kind of wasn't for me. But while I was there, I did dance a season with Ballet Arkansas. That was my big claim to fame, and came home with a whole truckload of antique furniture. So that was kind of nice. But yeah, so
there we go.
So that's why I was smiling when you were talking about Arkansas and Little Rock. It's like, yes, I was there. That was back in the late 80s, 1980s, 1980 something.
There you go.
So
then Granddad.
Yeah, Granddad. Well, mine didn't talk quite like that. They were sometimes hard to understand with the heavy Slavic accents. But so the other thing, tell people where they can find your podcast, because you do have a fantastic podcast. You have awesome guests.
I was going to say the only reason that the podcast seems to be doing well is because of guests like you. It's definitely not for my hosting. It's get the good people that do a good job. And so, but it's Professor of Perseverance podcast, probably on your platform you're listening already. Just go look for it. It's on near 30 of them out there that I know of. So,
and on YouTube as well. So you do post on YouTube.
I do. When I do mine, I'll do them live on YouTube and Facebook. Facebook, I think they knock them off after the first 24 hours or 48 hours. I think they don't stay there forever. But the YouTube is there, so you can go back and see all of them if you want to. Go catch Cheryl out there on hers and have a good old time and get inspired, motivated, inspiration, find some hope and encouragement.
And any final pearls of wisdom that you want to drop on the audience before we sign off?
The last thing I would like to say is everybody needs to learn to sing the ABCs. Okay. Now notice I said ABCs. I didn't say all the way to Z. All you need to do is sing ABC. Think of Michael Jackson when he sang ABC 1, 2, 3. It's all he's saying ABC. It's happening. It's 1, 2, 3 ABC. It's all it is. So ABCs. A, when you can accept your adversity, that's when healing can start happening. When you accept it. B, begin battling. What do you do to begin battling? Now start talking to people who's going through what you've been through, so you get some advice. At the fingertips, the internet, go research, find associations, organizations, other Facebook groups, people who's been through things that you're going through, and let them help you. And then C, once all that, then let's conquer our challenges.
Awesome. James, thank you so much for being on the show today. I have just thoroughly enjoyed talking to you. Love hearing your story. I love your energy and I love your enthusiasm and your positive outlook on life.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. And, you're pretty good as well.
Oh, I thank you. And please do give Ricardo a great big hug for me.
I will do that for you. So,
okay. And thank you so much. Again, thanks for being on the show.
All right.
And everybody, thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it. Make sure that you do check out the Professor of Perseverance podcast. Go to James's website, the professorofperseverance.com, correct? And, LinkedIn, you're on LinkedIn. So just, stalk him and follow him and check out his books. He's got a lot of, obviously, really wonderful information to share with people, a lot of encouragement, a lot of enthusiasm. And remember your ABCs. And that is the way of the FemiNinja.